Okay. And I will. You all have seen my face. This is me. I'm going to go ahead and stop my video. I'll turn it back on later, but so let me get to where I can forward the slides. I like to start off by just saying how wonderful it is that the SBA Columbus District Office collaborates with the Ohio Apex Accelerators, formerly known as PTAC. And we will have Billy Grill presenting today along with myself. And this is really a collaborative effort. I like to make sure that everyone has our contact information available. There are two of us in the SBA Columbus District Office that work with the SBA federal government contracting programs. So Shonda Harris is my colleague, and that is her contact information. And then my contact information is just below hers. And then Billy, his contact information is also on this slide, and we will have that as we finish up the training as well. So managing the chat, we have Rob Bondurant. I'm sorry if I got your last name wrong, but everyone knows him as Bondo. So he will be monitoring the chat, and also as questions come in, he will just be just interject the question so that it's timely. So this is a presentation that I will be going over some of the information, and Billy will be going over some of the information today. So I hope you learned something. I know that I learn something every time. Even if I'm presenting, I still learn things, because government contracting is anything but clear. So with that, Billy, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Sure, and I appreciate it, Jill. We love working with you guys too. And Jill's right. Government contracting has many nuances. It's about as clear as mud sometimes, but that's why you have resources like us. And if you could give me the next slide, Jill. So a quick overview of kind of what we do, how we do it. You can see we provide a breadth of services, everything from, I like to say, from factory to foxhole. Basically from your initial registration all the way through some post-award considerations and everything in between. And we do this because each business tends to be at a different evolution in their knowledge and their participation in federal, state, and local government. So you can see, registration certifications in federal government like SAM.gov, state and local like city and state governments. Then we get into your capability statement development. And this pipeline is actually it's a path of service to get you set and then get you marketing to federal customers, state and local customers. And you'll see this little ongoing service on the side, standards and certifications. That certifications like SBA certifications, also state and local. But also some of the standards you need to meet on the federal level, like cybersecurity, CMMC, generally accepted accounting practices. That is, it's seen as more of a boring part of what you do on that standard side, but it's necessary. It's necessary to make sure that you're meeting the standard of the customer that you're marketing to. So we really do a lot, but we also have a ton of great resource partners that help us through that space, like the SBA, the SBDC, our different regional partners. So, I always like to say, even if we think it's out of our purview, if we don't got a guy, we got a guy who's got a guy, because it takes a village to raise a business. And we're here for you as a belly button to push when you need something. Next slide, Jill. So I always like to start off with this. In order to really fully understand business development, you need to know what an opportunity is. An opportunity is the intersection of a requirement with funding. A lot of customers, even in the government space, they have a ton of requirements, but they may not have the funding. So you really need to do your research on both and come to a understanding of what each looks like. So that's, it seems like a very simple equation, but it is anything but in government and commercial business development. Next slide. Go ahead and click it one more time for me, thanks. So this is the overall acquisition process. Pretty simplified look at it. Right now, what we're looking at today is going to be that market research and preparation phase. So it's early on in the life cycle. And then we're going to take you throughout into that award phase. So we're really covering a good half of this cycle, which is a lot of information. But we're going to give you some high level understanding, hopefully some tips and tricks, and hopefully you'll have some good feedback and some good questions, because this really should be a conversation. We're here to help, and we don't want to death by PowerPoint you. We really want this to be interactive, and you'll see later on. We'll go through a SAM demo. I'll show you how to access notice types, how to search through them, what it looks like, how to save, how to follow, things like that, so that you can see it live in action. Next slide. And take it away, Jill.
All right. Thank you, Billy. And just to give you all a background on how we decided to cover this topic is that notice types are not intuitive. I mean, if you're brand new to government contracting, it is learning a separate language, and we try and really armor you with information so that you have the best chance of success. And I know this will come up in the chat. We usually get questions of having the slides after the presentation. We are actually going to upload the slides onto the Ohio University PTAC website in about a week. It'll be available, and you can download the slides from there. And then also you'll have access to all of the other trainings that we've done prior to this one, as well as future trainings. They will all be available on the Ohio University Apex Accelerator site. Even though we're 9 months in, I still call it PTAC, and I apologize for that. So today, and like Billy said, we don't want this to be a death by PowerPoint. So please, as you have questions, let us know, and I will try and keep everyone awake. I know that I'm especially alert because I have a raccoon in my attic that I have a person that is trying to trap it. So always an adventure here. So we're going to talk about just in order, but we're also going to try and keep it interesting. And this is only for federal government. So if you're new to government contracting, or even if you're a few months in, you'll realize that there is a different way of posting opportunities if you're a state government, if you're city government. So this is federal government. So we talk about what is a notice. And then within notices, there are 4 main types, which is a source of sought notification. What is that, and how does that impact your business? What's a request for information? And then pre-solicitation notices and solicitation notices. What is the difference between a bid and a proposal? What is the uniform contract format? You will see that it's essentially what solicitations, how they're organized. Examples of responsive and responsible, which is super important, because if you don't have a responsive and responsible submission, you have no submission, essentially. What is an award notice, and how does that why should you pay attention to those if you didn't get the award? And then Billy is going to take us through a demonstration of how to find these various notices. And then, what are some best practices when you are responding? And we will finish the training with a question and answer session. Billy, I cannot tell what slide I'm on. I kind of know when I need to stop. So if I'm not stopping, go ahead and interject anyway. It's fine.
No problem at all.
Okay. All right. So with federal government contracting certification programs, all of the legislation around federal government, the certification, the contracting programs are all legislated by Congress. And in the case of the small business programs, the SBA is responsible for implementing and managing the certification programs, but they also set up goals for federal agencies to follow. So the federal agencies, and by federal agencies, I mean Department of Defense, I mean civilian, pretty much all of them, except for the post office is outside of this, and the government printing office. They're kind of outside of these requirements because they are governed by another branch of government. So we are governed by the legislative branch. So these set aside programs are mandated by Congress, and there is a 5% set aside for women-owned small business. Small disadvantaged business, they increased that goal. I think last year the Biden administration did, they put it up to 12%. The Hub Zone certification, I'm sorry, the Hub Zone program has a 3% set aside. Service disabled veteran owned has 3%. And overall, there's a 23% of a requirement for all business to go to small business. So if you have registered your business in sam.gov, the small business status is a self-certification. And that self-certification is accomplished by when you complete your SAM registration. If you are a service-related industry, then it's the 5-year average of your gross receipts. So you would need to look at your 2018, no, 2017 through 2022 tax returns, and then divide that by 5, and that is your 5-year average. If you are a manufacturer, then it is your number of employees over a 5-year period, or actually it would be your current number of employees. We have so few manufacturers in Ohio that I would need to double check that. And certainly most of our manufacturers do not have 1,000 employees or 750 employees. So if you have a question about that, I can get clarification on it, but I know revenues is 5-year average, employees is, I believe, the current number of employees you have. So set asides mean that there is a certain dollar set aside for these categories. Again, small business is the only one where it's a self-certification. Woman owned is an official certification, so is 8A. So is Hub Zone, and so is Service Disabled Veteran Owned, and the SBA takes applications for all of those, processes those applications, and then renders a decision. So the SBA's portal for people or businesses that are qualified to apply for these certifications, it's Certify is the portal, certify.sba.gov. If any of you have any questions about that, just let me know or put it into the chat. Bondo may be able to put the certify.sba.gov into the chat.
You know, as an aside to that, Jill, we help you get ready for those certifications.
Absolutely, yes, Apex. Yes, you do.
A lot of us are certified veterans counselors, so we can help you put together the documentation that really prepares you to prove that control, that ownership, that day-to-day management in a nice, clear fashion, so that the SBA doesn't have to come back for clarifications or it helps you make the process more efficient. And we're happy to do so, happy to discuss it anytime.
And also when you, I would also add to that, when you as a company, you submit your application for certification in any of these programs, the SBA will come back to you if you're missing information. It's not a go or no go. Like if you're missing something in your application, SBA will get back with you and say, hey, can you provide clarification on this, or can you upload that? So it can take a little bit of time to go through the certification process. I know that there are some, it takes longer for some firms than for other firms, and we do trainings on certification application process as well. So if you had any questions, let us know. But so let's dive into contracting and what are notices. So it's easy for us to say to you, the small business, hey, just go on to sam.gov and just start doing your research. Well, if you're brand new to all of this, you don't know, okay, what's a notice? What's a notification? So there's actually a definition for it. You know, the government does a pretty good job of defining what it is they mean with certain things. It's the onus is on you as a small business, however, to find those definitions and understand them. So a notice, it's a method for contracting agencies to publish information to industry. So you are industry, because you are wanting to sell your products or services to the government, to publish information to industry and may be made at different stages of the federal acquisition cycle. So if you remember the slide that Billy had up, and he said, today we're going to be talking about market research. So that is the federal acquisition cycle, is a slide that he had. It's in different stages. So understanding when you go on to sam.gov, if you see, for example, a pre-solicitation, that's in a different stage than a source of sought notification, than a solicitation. So hopefully this presentation will help you understand what stage of a solicitation this particular requirement is under. So notices also, they are announcements of government solicitations, a word of a contract. They provide dates, times, and locations for meetings with industry, which you should pay attention to. This is the government saying, hey, industry, we would like to meet with you to discuss this up and coming requirement. A notice also includes sources sought, pre-solicitation, solicitations, business fairs. I get calls all the time. Hey, how can I get in with Right Pat? Hey, how can I get in with DLA? So they will often publish when they're having industry days, or if they're having special events where they're inviting industry, it'll show up on sam.gov. And again, you know, it's all published on SAM. You just need to know what it is you're looking at, essentially.
Hey, Jill, we have our first question.
Yes.
From Vincent. How long does it typically take SBA to certify after we apply?
It depends. So which certification is it? I would say we try within 90 days of a complete package. So that definition of complete package is when SBA is done, like going back and forth with you, the firm, over the documentation that's needed. So say it's for the woman-owned small business. If SBA receives the application and finds that you know, the articles of incorporation are missing or something like that, or they need clarification. So the clock hasn't started because SBA is in conversation with the applicant at that point. So it should be about 90 days from the receipt of a complete application. I will say the exception right now is 8A. 8A is not currently taking new applications. As of July 19th, SBA is not taking new 8A applications because of a court ruling at the federal court of Tennessee. This is not long-term, it's temporary. So we do not know at this point when SBA will be able to start taking new 8A applications. So I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail about that for this training, however. Right.
And, you know, as a sidebar, I've noticed with our clients when we submit, if it's a simpler submission, so if it's a basic LLC setup, no stocks, no share certificates, and it's a pretty basic operating agreement, it's usually a bit more simplified. When you have a more complex business, a C Corp with shares and ledgers and minutes, it's more documentation to pull together on your end. So that's just a note, that does have an effect on the lead time it takes our clients to get ready.
Yes, I agree. And if there's multiple owners, sometimes that can be a little bit complicated. And then if the business owner owns more than one business.
Right. Mhm.
So when it's just one owner and they don't own multiple businesses, it's not as complicated of an application. Okay. Now, my favorite of these notice types, in case anyone cares, is the sources sought notification, because a lot of times businesses will ask, how do I get ahead of the solicitation? It seems like this thing is rigged. I don't have a chance. I would say one of the best ways for companies to really get in on a solicitation is looking for sources sought notifications and requests for information. So a sources sought notification, I love to put the rules in so everyone can look them up for themselves. It's under FAR, which is the Federal Acquisition Regulation. I want to also say that the Federal Acquisition Regulation, it governs contracts. It is so important, very, very important for all of you to understand where all of where the rules come from, so you can look them up for yourself. So contracts are in it. I mean, it's thousands and thousands of pages, but pretty much the FAR covers everything for contracts. Now, I will say also that the SBA programs, the certification programs, they do not fall under the FAR. They fall under the Code of Federal Regulations, or the CFR. So if you have questions about the 8A hub zone, woman-owned or service disabled veteran-owned, those are all in the CFR. You will not find them in the FAR. And then you can also contact me or contact Apex Accelerators for more information on the small business programs. But for today's training, the sources sought notifications, the purpose of them, and you'll see. First, I talk about why federal agencies have them. So it's in FAR 5.201. So the primary purpose of the sources sought notice are to improve small businesses' access to information, and they want to enhance competition. Like the federal government wants competition. So they're letting you know, industry, that that the government is intending to buy this product or service, and they want you to have information so that you can determine whether or not you could either participate as a prime contractor, or you might be able to provide subcontracting expertise on this. It is a market research tool to determine if there are two or more capable businesses or small businesses that can perform the requirements that are outlined in these sources sought notifications. It is used by agencies to research the potential of a small business, hub zone, service disabled, veteran-owned, or woman-owned small business set aside. It does not result in a contract. Responding to a sources sought notification does not result in a contract. But what it does is, when you respond to it, if enough capable firms that are small business respond to it, for example, it'll be put out as a small business set aside instead of full and open competition. So when you see a requirement that is posted on SAM as a full and open competition requirement or solicitation, I kind of use those words interchangeably, but when you see a solicitation, that's full and open competition, you're competing against the giants. So you're out there competing against Boeing or Raytheon or Lockheed Martin. So your chances of being competitive against those giants aren't as good as you being competitive if it were out as a small business set aside. So they, Raytheon and Lockheed Martin are not small business, so they could not participate in that solicitation. The same holds true for HubZone, service disabled veteran owned 8A. If you respond to those as a qualified HubZone or as a qualified service disabled veteran owned, if there are enough, or if there are at least 2 HubZone companies, then the contracting officer will have to consider making it a HubZone set aside. And then that will even limit your pool greater. So it only be competed amongst HubZone or competed amongst service disabled veteran owned. So even though sources sought notifications do not result in a contract, they do result in limiting the pool of candidates of industry that can bid on the contract if you respond to them. In addition, like it gives you a feel of what the government is looking for. This is definitely your way of, it's one of the ways, it's a good way of you being able to get an idea of what the government will be buying in the near future. And there's a term that we don't cover in this presentation, like with a slide, but capture management and developing a federal government pipeline of opportunities. Like this could be something, if you see a source of sought notification or request for information that you respond to, you can put that into your pipeline of opportunities if you find that this is something that is definitely within the capabilities of your business. And I don't know, Billy, I'll just keep going unless you want to add something to it, Billy.
No, nothing here. I do want to let people know that the FAR is very important. We are guided by federal acquisition regulation. The coolest thing about the government space is the FAR is their playbook. The FAR will tell you exactly what the government's going to do, what you need to give them, and what will make you successful. So we take a lot of training every year on it so that you guys don't have to, but you should be aware of it. And you should know that there's a DFAR, a defense FAR. There's different FARs for different organizations. So just know it exists and know that it is what all of this is based off of. It's the guideline, the playbook, the end all be all, because it's codified. So just keep that in mind as we go through this presentation.
And you can search, like the Air Force has a site for the FAR. It's called the FAR site, actually, FAR space SITE, and you can search by keyword. So in preparation of this presentation, I actually searched the FAR site by source of sought notifications, and it pulled up FAR 5, like right away. So you don't have to go through all 2,000 pages of the FAR, and you can search by keyword. It makes it a lot easier.
Or if you're a geek like me, you can just have your handy dandy desk reference.
Oh my gosh, you could have that. Yes, look at that.
It's only one chapter. I mean, it's 53 parts and it's 1,063 pages, but it's only one chapter.
One chapter. See, yes, that's why the FAR site is so amazing. Yes, he's holding up one chapter of the FAR, and
That's a big paperweight.
Yeah,
it's incredible. The FAR site, it's and also the CFR has an electronic site now, and I started with SBA, didn't have that, so we would just get the giant CFR books on an annual basis. But now you can go to ecfr.gov and pop it. You just like search by keyword. It really is magical. So
we
for
have another
vendors,
question, Jill.
Sure.
From Brandy, can you repeat how this limits the pool of industry?
Absolutely. Yes. So when you go on to sam.gov, and Billy's going to do some demonstrations later, when you look on a solicitation, if it says full and open competition, I think it says, yes, say full and open, that means you're competing against all industry. and that means you're competing against a Raytheon or a Lockheed Martin that's like a multi-billion-dollar corporation. But when you go on to sam.gov and you see that it's the notice type is small business, or that it's hub zone or woman owned, a lot of times that's a result of a sources sought response, because federal agencies have to take into consideration the responses they get from industry. And if they have enough small businesses that respond that are technically capable, that's important. You got to be technically capable. You have to spend your time, and you may be technically capable, but if you put together a sloppy sources sought notice, they won't find you technically capable. So you gotta spend your time on it. So if they have at least 2 small businesses that respond, for example, or hub zone or woman owned, then they need to, by the FAR, set it aside for that category. So if they have a majority of small business, they may put it out as a small business set aside, because they want all respondents to be able to compete. So for example, if it goes out as a small business set aside, then all small businesses can participate. But if it goes out as a hub zone, then only hub zone certified companies can participate. Hopefully that answers your question. When capable companies do not respond to a sources sought notification, then set aside opportunities might be lost, and it'll go out as full and open. And really, it's easier for contracting offices to have things go out as full and open, because the larger businesses are sometimes easier to work with, because they already have all of the resources and they've done federal work before, and it's an easier thing for them. So they do want to partner with small business. They have to, like, it's 23% set aside for small business. So responding to the sources sought notifications just kind of tell the agencies, hey, there are enough small businesses out there, so you need to put it out as a small business set aside. I've heard stories from the Air Force, like small businesses that remember, Air Force putting out a sources sought notification on Christmas or the day after Christmas, because they know there's not as many people that may respond at that time. So, and there's a way to filter in sam.gov by sources sought notifications so that you're seeing them as they come in. And the more you respond to them, the better you'll get at responding to them. So it's a great market research tool, both for federal agencies and for industry. So I've already talked about getting ahead of the solicitation. That is where you can, through this market research, you're like, the government's going to be buying this, and then you can start formulating your plans. So if you can only perform part of it, could you partner with somebody? Could you form a teaming agreement? Could you form a joint venture agreement? So that's a way for you to start planning for success on that particular solicitation. All right, and Billy, this is your slide.
Yeah, so just a quick delineation, and Jill's right. The government views the big companies as lower risk because they do have the $1 million budgets. But overall, our client base, and especially in Ohio, I might be biased, but they have a ton of great small business capability. And in order to get in front of the solicitation, it's important that you look at your market research phase as your entry point for developing that capture management. We do a little series on capture management, 7 steps to capture management, proposal development, things like this. But really, your entry point is going to be here during market research. So there's 2 types that the government uses for market research. Jill has covered a lot of this. The tactical is the RFI, which is, it's a little bit different than a sources sought. So an RFI is soliciting feedback from industry on a solution. Can this be done? How does industry do it? It's usually a bit more specific in requirements. So they want to see price, delivery, They want to see timelines, project management, different types of pretty granular information there for the RFI. Then the source of SWOT is really that tool for developing your set-aside strategy on the government side. My advice to you guys is respond to these. Get in front of the client, and even more, come in heavy. If you have a team already set up and you put that team on paper during the source of SWOT, the government will know that you have a capability and a plan for that capability, and they're much more likely to see you as technically capable and responsive. On the source of SWOT notice, my advice to you guys, as a small business, you should be doing this anyway. Get out and network. Go make a friend. Go meet people. If you're a woman-owned small business and you have another company, we call them competimates in the valley here, because sometimes you're competing, sometimes you're teaming. It's a very interesting dynamic between businesses and the government space. But you need to go out and have those relationships. You should know a list of SDVOSBs with complementary capability or the same capability that you have. You should know WOSBs, hub zones, 8As. You should have that cadre of trusted teammates that you can look at these opportunities with. Because if I'm a small woman-owned business and an opportunity comes out for a source of SWOT that I'm capable of, I'm calling my other woman-owned small business friend and I'm saying, hey, how about you respond to this as well, so we can push it woman-owned small business. And then when it comes out as a woman-owned small business, I'm teaming with them. Effectively making it a set aside and then pulling away another piece of the competition by teaming with that woman-owned small business. Things like that are possible and completely legal on the industry side. Really it's about making sure that the client knows that there's a capable, woman-owned small business, two capable woman-owned small businesses that are in the industry space. Another point to make here when we're in that RFI source of SWOT phase is you have your Apex Accelerator that we can help you make sure you're compliant, and we can help with teaming and networking opportunities and introductions to a certain extent. But there's also small business champions on the inside of the fence, the Office of Small Business Programs. So, if I'm responding to an Air Force opportunity over in Lifecycle Management Center at the base, after I respond, and I know that we have some great responses coming in, I'm contacting my small business specialist over in Lifecycle Management or Air Force Research Lab. I'm letting them know what we're doing because they want this thing to go small. Their goal is to push that spending to small business and to champion the small business. So you have resources inside and outside of the fence. We can help you through this process and guys to update and to let you know the progress, so that they can see it through and make sure that there's a voice to be heard on the small business side. Overall, this is basically the slide is outlining the FAR, again, Federal Acquisition Regulation part, and how it works around this market research that the government does. Next slide, Joe. So why are we responding to this? Again, you want to be able to influence that acquisition strategy, like Jill was saying. Yes, each federal agency does have an OSBP or an OSDBU, small disadvantaged business utilization, I think it is. But for the most part, there is a small business agency or program within each federal agency. And there's actually a pretty good small business specialist directory out there. It's on the GovCon Chambers website. You do have to give them your email to download it. My advice to you would be to get with your small business, get with your Apex Accelerator counselor, and we can show you the process from doing market research, putting together a capability statement, and then actually teach you how to communicate with folks inside the fence. Because there are things you can and can't do. And actually, we'll talk about some of those during this acquisition strategy. There is a blackout period on these opportunities, when they come out and they have a submission date, you are not supposed to market to the government, because you can disqualify yourself by doing that until after the solicitation is submitted. And there's also certain things you shouldn't be asking during that communication. And those are things that we can help you with, help you develop that outreach plan and that communication strategy, and educate you on some of the do's and don'ts. Yeah, the other reason to respond to these, and again, they will not result in any kind of contract, but it's to help shape the requirement. So when the government is asking you guys for feedback, they want to know, how does this work in industry? Because we want to work as efficiently and as best we can. So from a small business standpoint, if I have a certain technical certification, or if I have certain capabilities that can really limit the market and help me differentiate myself, I'm urging the government to put those in as requirements. So maybe I think you should have a CMMI certification, or maybe I think you should have your ISO 9000 in order to compete for this, because I have it, and that's going to help me. You can help shape that requirement during this phase. You can also get the inside track. Yeah, every client that I have that submits an RFI, I tell them, email the contracting officer afterwards, start asking some basic questions. Have you developed an acquisition strategy? Is there an acquisition timeline? Is there somebody in the program office that we can speak to about our capability to help further develop the requirement? You won't always get a yes. And these guys are usually busy as well. Contracting officers, they're saints for what they do, because they really put their nose to the grindstone on this stuff. But it's worth the ask. And it's, yeah, if you don't submit to the RFI, then the chances of you getting an answer become a lot lower than if you did put in the time and effort, because they want to talk to serious inquiries only. So it's really important to take the time and respond to these. I think it's worth the effort to have conversations with teammates and put together full strategies around these, because they will develop into opportunities. The government doesn't put these out just, kind of willy-nilly. They're putting these out because they have a discrete requirement they need to fill. And, your small business champions inside the fence would love to see that requirement go small business. I think the Lifecycle Management Center here like that, they consistently do over $1 billion in small business funding every year now. There are some great champions here. Kudos to Luke Schultz, Jeff Malott, Brian McJilton over at BASE, your small business directors, because they really do care. They will take the time to help you, but you have to let them know what you're doing, and keep them looped in. We call it SA, situational awareness. But they really are a great addition to your communication plan. Next slide, Jill. And you're back on.
And I just wanted to add to what you said, Billy, we're doing a presentation in October with the Office of Small and Disadvantaged Business Utilization. So we're inviting some of our OSDBU small business professionals to talk about what it is that they do.
Well, that's awesome.
We had a question from Sue. We had self-certified ED, WSB, and WSB in the past. In this process through the SBA now, and how much time does it take in general if we attempt this independently?
Well, the self-certification,
without the third party cert, Jill. That's kind of how I'm reading that.
Yeah, you can still do the third party certification. I believe they have, okay, so let me backtrack a little bit. Woman owned was self-certification. There was a repository set up. So woman owned small businesses had the option of doing the self-certification and uploading their information to SBA's repository, or they could go with a third party certifier. There were 4 of them. There are still 4 of them. And pay a fee to have that third party certifier process and then make a decision on the application. And then on October 2020, SBA set up, because they had to, through the National Defense Authorization Act, they had to start certifying small businesses as woman-owned if they were qualified. So now, even if you self-certify on SAM, you still have to either go through a third-party certifier or go through SBA. So the SBA site, I think, is WOS. I can look that up. They have a brand new site that they just launched, but you will have to apply. The difference between the two, the third-party certifiers are a fee-based, and the SBA is there's no fee. Again, it has the same 90 days from a complete application. And as Billy was mentioning, sometimes the more, and it's true, sometimes the more complicated cases can take longer, and complication can be your ownership, or if you have affiliation, or if the documentation you provided just isn't clear, the SBA can ask for additional documentation to render a decision. Hopefully that answered it. No, all right, so we will just dive into pre-solicitation notifications. So a pre-solicitation, it appears in FAR 5.204. So federal contracting officers must synopsize or propose contract action before issuing any resulting solicitation. I will tell you, based on my experience of working with businesses over the years, when you see a pre-solicitation, it usually is, and there is someone unmuted. Okay. When you see a pre-solicitation notice, you need to look at it very carefully. You may be too late to participate in it, because sometimes solicitations can take months of preparation. When you see the pre-solicitation, you may not have enough time. So you just need to really take a look at it. So pre-solicitations, they will describe the work that's going to be performed, the location of the work, dates for issuing invitations, opening bids, and completing contract performance. State where plans will be available for inspection without charge. This is more construction contracts. State submission deadlines for invitations to bid. State whether the award is restricted to small business. That's great. Then you'll know if it's a small business set aside or what type of requirement it'll be. Specify any amount to be charged for solicitation documents, and then it's publicized in sam.gov. Oops. Oh, I just went a little crazy there. Okay. And then this is from the government side, this one here. So for vendors, just keep in mind, federal solicitation can take months or years to develop. The other thing to consider is once a proposal is submitted, depending on whether, like this is timely. So for this time of year, like the fourth quarter is when a lot of contracts get funded. And when you hit October, that's the beginning of the new fiscal year. As Billy was mentioning, they may have the requirement, but they don't have the funding for it yet. So sometimes after you've submitted a proposal, it can take a long time to actually get it awarded. And it depends on if it's protested. Like I know Health and Human Services has a giant IDIQ called CIOSP4 that's been out for a couple of years now because of protests. Pre-solicitations, they give vendors an opportunity to obtain information about future solicitations and develop strategies. So as Billy was mentioning, I mean, you may be competitors in the commercial world, but in government contracting and federal contracts specifically, teaming can be the best thing for you and your possible teaming partner, because you can combine your capabilities and then you have a clearer shot at being capable to perform. The size of contracts have grown so much, even since I've been with the SBA, that being able to partner can really increase your chances of being a prime contractor. Clearances, that's a huge one. So especially for DoD contracts, can you get a secret clearance or a facility clearance? Those are usually obtained by working with a company that already has one. It's fairly difficult to get a clearance. So when you are researching opportunities on SAM, does it require a clearance? And if it does, you may not have the amount of time to obtain one, or you may not be able to obtain one. So do you want to spend the time of formulating a response if you're not going to have a clearance? So my answer is probably not. What's the size of the contract? If you know the size of the contract will be several $1,000,000 and your company has receipts of $200,000, how are you going to support that size of a contract if you're awarded that contract? So have a relationship with a lender so that you have the ability to scale up if you need to. So what that looks like is a line of credit, or meeting with a lender to see what your options may be in that case.
Jill, we have a series of questions.
Okay.
So Davion, so basically the starting point is getting on SAM.gov and SBA and start applying or making proposals. Assume that's a question.
Not making proposals necessarily, looking for these various notice types. So which ones are sources sought notifications? You can dive in and respond to a solicitation if after you've reviewed it, it meets, if you feel like you have a chance of getting it based on your review and understanding of what they're asking for and the timelines. Again, can you perform all of it? If you look under the considerations, can you perform all of the contract or part of the contract? If it's only part of it, then consider teaming. Does it have clearance requirements? What's the size of the contract? Where is it being performed? So all of those things you have to think about before submitting a response.
And I'd go a step further, Jill. I think before you want to really build a foundation. So you want to be registered
Yes.
as an entity. You want to get your capability statement together. You want to make sure that you have something called recent and relevant past performance. Recent is within 3 to 5 years, and relevant is similar in size, scope, and complexity to the current opportunities you're looking at. So that's really where you start building that client profile, and you can whittle these opportunities down in SAM based on your past performance so that you'll be competitive. It's a really good way to dial in on, because in SAM, anything over $25,000 by mandate has to be posted, unless it's on one of those big vehicles like CIOSP. So there's a lot out there, and really it's our job to help you work through that efficiently, so that you're doing effective bid, no bid decisions. You're getting in early and you're looking at the right opportunities. So I think there's a lot that goes in pre-notice to build that foundation, but that's something we can help with to prepare you for how to set up searches in SAM, how to find those opportunities similar in size, scope, and complexity.
And I would just, yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Well, I was gonna ask another question. We got questions coming in, but if you got something to add, Jill, go ahead.
Back to the initial you can, like I said, you can dive in and start responding, but your chances of success are not very good unless you have that foundation. And so part of it, you can learn a lot from responding. You can request a debrief. We don't talk about that a lot on this presentation. You can request a debrief if you're not awarded the contract, and the contracting officer will give you feedback. And the feedback depends on the contracting officer. Sometimes you'll get very good feedback that you can use for future responses. And sometimes you'll get feedback that's not really very constructive, like they'll just say your pricing was off or something simple like that. But just kind of just diving right into it, it's going to be difficult for a win out of the gate.
And you want to remember, this is very much marketing to the government. So if you put in a very bad proposal, it'll leave a bad taste in their mouth. You want to have that.
They remember.
They do. And you remember, somebody on the other side has to take the time to review what you submit. So you want to put your best effort forward, best foot, and most prepared.
Okay, we have another question on pre-solicitation on SAM. Is there a way to look or filter out pre-solicitations, any keywords or searches?
There is. We'll run through the notice types during the demo, and I'll show you exactly how to do that.
Okay, good. And Vincent's got, how can a small business request a security clearance?
Do you want to tackle this, Joe, or you want me to?
It's not easy. Like and Billy, you may want to add, usually security clearances are obtained through subcontracting with a prime that has one.
Yeah, security clearances are by need only. So you have to have a contract with a need to request one. Now, I know the DoD is working on some aspects of that, but overall, you have to remember that it takes the DoD a lot of time, and the DOE has clearance too. But it takes them a lot of time to review and background check and make sure that you're prepared for one. So they don't give them out easily. It's a process on both parts, contractor and government.
And then David has a question on, if your NAICS code places your org in a large category, what is the best practice for teaming with smaller orgs and same NAICS to be compliant for proposal?
Oh, that would be, so if you're small under some but not others, is my understanding. If you wanted to still compete under a NAICS code where you are no longer small, then you would, a strategy is to form a mentor protege agreement, an SBA mentor protege agreement with a small business, and then form a joint venture agreement that you could then bid on those contracts where you are no longer small.
And you can also team into that with
You can also team, with a prime sub relationship.
Right, with 5149 or whatever the share is. From an Apex standpoint, we very much value teaming. It's a force multiplier. So we work with other than smalls to introduce them to our small businesses, and also help them network. We do that with Peerless, with Aerodyne. We do it with a couple of different companies that are cognizant of leaving that small business space. So we have experience making introductions and getting other than smalls plugged in. Is that good, Bondo? We on top?
Yep, we're
all right.
we're right at it. We're good.
Very good.
Perfect.
All right, and this is you, Billy.
Yeah, so my experience, pre-solicitations, they cover a lot. Usually it's as Jill mentioned, they're updating something in the SOW statement of work or the T's and C's. Usually it's pretty much they're getting ready to release this thing as a RFP or RFQ, and they're just cleaning up some things before. Sometimes there's an attached industry day or conference. We actually just had that happen to us with GSA Deems opportunity. They released a pre-solicitation, said, by the way, we have an industry day. It's next week. So be cognizant of those types of opportunities where you can connect with the customer, connect with current primes, connect with potential teammates and others. And it can be used to update some strategy. So while you respond, usually you don't need to. Usually it's the government giving you an update, a heads up, like, hey, this is how it's going. But overall, if you ever get a chance to attend the industry day or a conference around the opportunity, highly suggest you do if you're interested. That is one way to really get an inside, get in front of the customer, get a good competitive intel landscape, which is always important. You have to know who else is bidding this thing. If you're going in, and I always use this as a bellwether for my bid, no bid decisions. If I'm going into an opportunity and I'm spending, remember, a lot of time and effort, some of these responses can be upwards of 200 pages. If I'm putting all that investment, that thousands and thousands and thousands of dollar investment in, I want to make sure I know three things. I want to make sure I know the client and their mission and how I tie in. I want to make sure that I know the capability, technical, functional. I want to know what they need and that I can do it. And I want to make sure I know my competition, because you have to know who you're up against and what their capability, their team. You should have all of that intel by the time you decide to do a bid or no bid decision. You have to as a small business, because you can't go into a proposal with a percentage of win that's under 60-70%. If you do that, then really you're just throwing money away. So from a preparation standpoint, you want to use these notices as ability as tools on your side to market yourself to the customer, but also to get intel, and really make connections. We are guided by federal acquisition regulation, but it's a relationship-based business still. People work with others they know, like, and trust. So you want to build that trusted team. You want to build trust with the customer by responding responsive and responsibly. And you want to really initiate yourself throughout the whole process, in order to have the best P of win, is what we call it, percentage of win. So next slide. And that's back to you, Jill.
All right, so finally here we are in the actual solicitation. So solicitation notices are FAR Part 15. So, and then subpart 15.2 is solicitation and the receipt of proposals. And documents that make the government's requirement clear so the businesses can submit competitive bids. So this is it. So you have that foundation, as Billy was mentioning. You may have you have your capability statement. You've responded to this sources sought, and sometimes you don't even see all of those things before you see the solicitation, but you should have your foundation ready to go when you decide to respond. So there are two types of competitive bids. There's a request for proposal that is primarily for services, and requests for proposals are what can be sometimes hundreds of pages and hundreds of hours, and a lot of time and energy and resources spent in putting them together. And then there's requests for quotes, which are primarily for products. Now, if you're a manufacturer, you are also going to spend a lot of time putting together your request for quote, but usually it's not as much time as a request for proposal. Solicitations are used by federal government for the purchase of equipment, materials, goods, and construction, and you will see those notices on sam.gov. So for the vendors, it is, again, a formal request for proposal. Solicitations contain multiple documents with multiple parts, and Billy's going to go over the uniform contract format. Most of federal solicitations use that uniform contract format, and it's actually outlined in the FAR as well. It requires careful reading. I mean, I can't emphasize enough, even though we're kind of doing away with printing things and getting out highlighters and whatnot, I think that when you are really considering a solicitation, getting those highlighters back out again and reading and rereading, it's very, very important, because you don't want to be super excited and ready to respond, and then you find out on page 67, part A, that it requires a security clearance. You know what I mean? So you just have to make sure you are prepared to read and to go through the whole thing. Reading through it will help vendors decide whether they have the technical and financial qualifications. Back to what I mentioned about, do you have the ability to scale up? Can you go without getting paid? Like the government, if it's a small business, the government's required to pay you within certain timeframes that should assist you in being able to move forward in your contract. They can be progress payments, but that is outlined in your, it should be outlined in the solicitation, and that should be something you ask the contracting officer if it's not there, if it's possible to do it. You must have an active SAM registration. It's so easy to let your SAM registration lapse. If you have to go in there once a year and just renew it, it's got to be active. If it's not active, you don't get to submit your proposal. I mean, it can be something as simple as that. So you have to have somebody out there checking and making sure that SAM registration is active. Winning a solicitation results in a federal contract award. You'll find any solicitation that's valued at $25,000 or above will show up in SAM.gov, unless it's like an 8A sole source contract. Those are not on SAM, and if it's below 25,000, then that's usually purchased through the government purchase card, and you will not see those either. All right, Billy, I think this one's yours.
And I also have my handy dandy proposal playbook that I keep on my desk too. So yeah, I apparently have too many books on my desk, but it's really important to know how to develop these documents. And it takes a team to do this. If you're doing your business development, you can't also be proposal manager, proposal writer, subject matter expert. So it really does take a lot of resource and a lot of attention.
You're muted for some. There you go.
I accidentally hit mute instead of stop video. So the process overall is worth it, but it's a long lead time, sometimes years, to get to this final stage. So this is a quick just kind of bid versus proposal difference. Bids are submitted as invitation for bids, and awards are made only on price and price related factors. So that's lowest price, it wins every time. Proposals are submitted to request for proposals, and they're made on price and non-price. So best value. The government likes doing a price, technical capability, and past performance trade-off. And we'll look a little bit more about that in the uniform contract format. And then quotes are submitted to your RFQs. And they're also made on price and non-price factors, although price is usually the most important there. Remember, when you submit, it is binding. The most unique thing about the U.S. federal government is the federal government is the only entity that can reserve the right to exercise the option. Meaning, if you have a 5-year period, 1 base and 4 option years with the government, you don't get a say whether or not you can drop the contract over those next 4 years. The client, the government, tells you. So if you underbid something and you end up losing money in the first year, you can't say, well, I don't want to do this anymore, we're losing money. You are now in a binding agreement with the U.S. government, one of the biggest customers in the whole world, if not the biggest. And they will hold you to those options, even if that means you keep losing money. So just keep that in mind when you're putting some of these together. It's very much a large commitment, but I can tell you from firsthand experience, 20 years in the industry, that the juice is worth the squeeze. They're a great customer, and the great thing about the U.S. government is there's always more work and they always pay on time. As Jill mentioned, they have an accelerated payment program for small business. They also have some other progress payment type programs. So it really does, it comes down to your readiness to submit and to be successful. And that's really an evolution of your business. I saw a question come in. What is the general response time with Apex accelerators if you were to utilize help? Right, it depends on the accelerator. Right now in Southwest Ohio, we're pretty strapped for resource, so it may take a little while, but we usually try to reach out within a week of the application. And then it might take us another couple of days to get you on the schedule. But you have to remember, this is a process. This is not quick. We call it eating the elephant one bite at a time. It will take a long-term commitment, but that's why we're here. We're here as trusted advisors to work you through everything from foundational pursuits. And we've had clients that have been with us for 10 plus years. So it's really something that we pride ourselves on, to stay with you, not throughout just the first proposal, but throughout your evolution into the government space, so that hopefully you can become one of those other than small businesses that then turns around and works with our current small business. On the B versus P side, the bid versus proposal, I would say a lot of manufacturing tends to come out as RFQ. A lot of your more intangible services like IT, engineering, those tend to come out as RFPs. We can help you with both. It's a matter of just knowing your types and what they're asking for from you. Next slide, Joe. So that brings me to the uniform contract format. This is the most common type of format that you'll see a RFP come out in. You can see sections A through M. It goes through basically every piece of the contract format, and some of them I pay more attention to than others, admittedly. Your section C is going to be where your performance of work statement or statement of work is. That's going to be where the government is telling you what they need. I pay a lot of attention to that because that's really where you're building your technical proposal. And then I tend to jump down to section L and section M. The instructions to bidders, the great thing about the government, again, they're giving you their playbook. They want to know, and they will tell you, it should be this many pages. You should have Times New Roman, with 1-inch margins and 12 font. They're going to lay it out exactly what they see. And then section M is your evaluation factors for award. They're going to tell you what's most important. Is it price, past performance? Is it your tech proposal? So they're going to give you exactly what they want to see. And that's why it's so important to read through your proposal. You guys will know exactly what to submit once you read through it. And then it's up to us on Apex's side to make sure you're not going to get disqualified for something avoidable, or to make sure, that you're a little light here, need more here, things like that. But overall, it's all out there. It's public knowledge. That's the great thing about the government. Everything they do is public, with very few exceptions. So, you have the template right here in front of you. And as you develop more proposals, you'll notice you have more reusable components. So every proposal usually has an executive summary, something about the company. There's a lot of boilerplate you can reuse. You can reuse past performances as long as you make sure that they're kind of molded to each customer. And certain parts you'll just inherently develop on your own, and it'll become more efficient as you go. And then the section K, the reps and certs, that's actually available in your SAM.gov registration. A lot of people take the time to fill out individually in each solicitation, but you can just download a PDF of your certs and reps from your SAM.gov profile and attach it. So that could save you some time there. Next slide, Joe. So this gets me to responsive and responsible submissions. We've hit on this a little bit. I don't think I can foot stomp it enough. Examples of being responsive. You're submitting it on time. Remember, the government's getting about 200 different proposals for each opportunity. They're going to disqualify anybody they can up front to lessen that workload. So if you're a minute late, that will be an automatic disqualification. They don't care if your internet was down or if UPS was late. My advice to everybody submitting proposals, submit it at least 24 hours in advance. If you submit it 24 hours in advance, you actually might have a leg to stand on if it is somehow late, if there is technical issue. And remember, it's the government's time you're submitting it on. So if it's 12 o'clock Central, that's 12 o'clock Central. They don't care if you're Eastern. So things like that, making sure it's complete, making sure that you're not taking any exceptions to the T's and C's, or if you do, they're very clearly spelled out. Making sure that you obey the page limits. We know you guys have a ton to say. Sometimes it's harder to edit than to add. You want to make sure that you're being very concise. My advice to my clients that bid these proposals, no fluffy language. I'm a marketing guy. I love the fluffy stuff. But overall, be concise and be very, very technical in your approach. Tell them what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, no exceptions. Make sure you follow those instructions. So that's really your responsiveness. And then what about being responsible? Well, that's sort of building that foundation, that evolution of your business. You want to make sure that you have satisfactory performance. There are contractor responsibilities you are signing up for to make a best effort to satisfy requirements and timeline. Do you have adequate financial resources? Again, the government doesn't care if you'll go bankrupt performing this contract. You signed up for it. That is a binding agreement. Management and technical expertise. Do you have the back office support? Can you support generally accepted accounting principles? Could you support a potential security clearance? Do you have a facility security officer? Things like these are all things you have to consider when you're submitting this proposal, and make sure that you demonstrate it for the government so that they can review it and can be favorable in their judgment. There's a lot to think about here. My advice is, if you are just looking at the space, try looking at smaller opportunities, like Joe had mentioned, opportunities under the simplified acquisition threshold, maybe even opportunities under the government purchase card threshold. Look at teaming. Teaming is a great force multiplier. Maybe you want to start subcontracting first so that you can build up that capability before you try to prime contract. That's all completely acceptable in this space. So just want to make sure that you know what the magnitude of the contract will be when you start looking at submitting to those proposals. Next slide, Joe. And back to you.
All right, there it goes. So finally, like award notices. So we're going to talk a little bit about award notices. Bondo, are there questions?
Nope, we're up to speed.
Okay, good. And how are we on time? 11:22. Okay. So award notices. So they show the FAR talks about award notices under subpart 5.3. So contracting officers must synopsize contracts that are exceeding 25,000 that are likely to result in subcontracts. So as a business, why would you care about award notices? Because obviously if you're finding the award notice, most likely you weren't awarded the contract, but there are always subcontracting opportunities. Now, a lot of times, the subcontractor teams have already been decided at the time of award, but there are always business relationships that do not work out. So when you see an award notice, it'll give you the name of the contractor that was awarded that contract. There's nothing that prohibits you from reaching out to them as a potential subcontractor. So don't out of the gate decide that, oh, it's too late for my company to be a part of this. A lot of times the subcontracting teams are already formed, but sometimes they're not. So back to what Billy was saying, you got to go out there and you need to meet people. You need to go to business networking events. You need to find out who's awarded contracts just for this, for subcontracting opportunities, because that will help you to build your federal past performance. A lot of the businesses that I've met with over the years, they got their start in subcontracting. So definitely be on the lookout for those award notices, and consider reaching out to them with your capability statement, or request a meeting with them, and just go from there. There are exceptions to awards being posted on sam.gov, and I just put those exceptions and on this the acquisition.gov website, in case you wanted to see what those exceptions were. I read them. I didn't see them really relevant to this particular training, and I was trying to cut back on the amount of slides. So there we go. For vendors, as I mentioned before, award notices they're excellent market research tools. They will mention the name of the prime contractor. When I mean prime contractor, that is the business that will be performing that contract. And depending on the size of the contract, the prime contractor awardee will have to have a subcontractor. They have to have a participation from, especially if it's a full and open competition, and the awardee is an other than small business, they have to have small business participation on that contract. Many vendors get their start in government contracting through subcontracting. And then the award notices also inform vendors of the final negotiated price, so that you can see, okay, this is what the government purchased this for. Was I in the competitive range? What can I do to get my company in the competitive range? All right, and then we are going to have some demonstrations here, so I will turn it back over to you, Billy.
Awesome. Yeah, and just a side note on the award notices. They're great competitive intel. Absolutely awesome information. That's the great thing about the government is all of this data is public. The tough thing about the government is all of the data is public. So trying to get to the data you need can be a chore sometimes, but it's out there. And the government, they're very transparent with it makes it so many great resources out there. One of the resources that I'm about to show you is sam.gov. So I'm going to go ahead and do a screen share here. Just one moment. And it looks like my screen share is loading. Does everybody see what I see? sam.gov and my way too many tabs I have open?
I see it. Yep, you're good.
Okay, we'll start you off at the beginning. So first things first, if you don't have a sam.gov account, even if you're not connected to your company, you can sign into sam.gov and create an account. And that's going to let you do a couple of different things that are pretty cool. The tab that's used very much the most is the search tab. Now, you don't have to be signed in to look at contract opportunities. But if you do sign in, you get some neat capability around saving your searches and downloading searches. So, yeah, it's really easy to do. Set up a login.gov account through SAM. Then you can sign in and you can have some pretty good capability added to your search. So what I always do in SAM.gov, and we're just going to say I'm a program management company. Okay, so what I want to know first off is, well, what's the product or service? Every product or service has something called a NAICS code or a product and service code attached to it. We can help you get those codes. I've been doing this a while, so I know that my code is going to be 541611, which is Admin Management, General Management Consulting. And you'll see that's going to give me 600 results. That's a lot to work with. Now, I can narrow that result many different ways. I can do keywords, but what I want to do I want to get in early. So here's that sources sought tab. See where it takes me from 600 opportunities down to 32? That's a way to quickly and efficiently get into the early stages of your acquisition. And then you can do one thing else, which I usually tell my clients to do. You cannot, I don't care how good you are, build a 10-page request for information in a single day. So you have these updated dates and these response dates. I usually want next week. You can do next 3 days if you're feeling pretty ambitious. Next week usually works for me. So I just went from 600 opportunities to 3 opportunities. Now, what do I want to do around that? Once I have these search that I like, and again, guys, you can narrow this down by federal organization. Get in here and play around with the search criteria, because really what this criteria is your client profile. Capability, you can know client, you can know keyword to narrow it down, and then the notice type and the response date are really preparing you to get in early on the acquisition. So once I'm happy with that search, what I want to do, I just want to go here, I'll save it down. I'll say this is my 541-611 RFI search, and I'll save it. Now there's an extra step here because it is the government space. You want to then go to your workspace that you can get to when you're signed in. And what I want to do, I want to go to my save searches here. And you'll see I do this for clients a bit. But here's that 541-611 search. I go to the actions button, and I just want them to notify me. So that way, anytime there's an update in this search, you'll get an email saying, hey, there's an update, check it out. And then you can get right back to your search results. So that is your sources sought and your RFIs. Are there any questions around that as I'm working through some of the capabilities in SAM? And I'll take that silence as no. So what we want to do then is, what I can do is clear my search real quick. And then you simply do the same thing with your 541-611. If I didn't have fat fingers. With your NAICS code, again, 600 results. I take my notice type down to pre-solicitation. Now remember, if the first time you're seeing the opportunity, it's already in pre-solicitation, you either want a teammate that has submitted to the RFI or knows the client, or it better really be in your wheelhouse because you're coming in fairly late. One thing you can do is you can also combine these notice types to look at the sources sought in pre-solicitation. So that's always a possibility as well. Another capability that you may want to look at, when I'm looking at some of these opportunities and I click down, you'll see the ability, and again, only if you're signed in, to follow this opportunity. So I can follow this opportunity all the way from RFI to RFP, and it'll give me a notice every time it's updated. Now, CETA's a bit of a big opportunity, so we can look at some of the information here, but you'll see under the classification, it'll tell you what set aside it is. Now, if it's coming out as a source of sought, obviously there isn't a set aside yet, but in pre-solicitation, you'll usually see one, or they're updating it to give you one. Always look at the documents, the draft statement of work, look at the PDFs, the amendments. These are what are going to give you all the information you need for a bid, a no bid. It'll give you information on who you should team with. Everything is right there as the government sets it out. Another useful piece of information is this contact information. Just remember, be cognizant that there are blackout periods during the acquisition life cycle. where you should not be contacting anybody from the government, and that is usually during a submission. So when you have a submission for the RFP or RFQ, you want to make sure that you're cognizant of that. There's another really useful tool here around these opportunities called the interested vendors list. You can actually say you're an interested vendor here and post your information if you're tied to your company through your login. Now, what that does for you, it lets people know, hey, I want a team. One word of caution around this interested vendors list is the incumbents, the people with the inside track, the people that are replying to the RFI and talking to the customer, they are not putting their information here because they don't want to give anybody competitive intel that they're bidding it. So don't take this as the end all be all. People that are not on this list very much can and will reply to the opportunity, but it may be some good ways to make contacts around other interested parties and start building that teaming capability. And then the last but not the least, you can go with the solicitation and the combined synopsis solicitation. So that'll give you 71 results. Again, you want to realize that if this is the first time you're seeing it, your percentage of win is very low because you've had people talking to the client for years at this point, or at the very least months. And you can also set some response dates here. I'd probably say next month at the very least to put together a solicitation. That gives you 28 results. And then remember, there's other ways to filter this data. My advice to you is, well, we as Apex can help you set up safe searches, do some customized training. But B, get familiar with this search criteria and how to use it. It's a government system, it's public. You don't need a login to do it. It's good to have one. But this is it's open for you all day to mess around with and come up with something, some good searches. The other part of this is the award notices, and we can take this off and just do any time. So these are the award notices that are coming out. They're going to tell you who it was awarded to, how much it was awarded for, what the set aside was. There's some pretty good intel in here as well to see who's doing what. We tend to use some other tools around this, past contract awards that are a little bit more capable. But this is definitely a search that you may want to use. Just as a little pro tip for you guys, there's another notice type called special notice. And these are usually used for things like industry days. Wrong text box there. So if you want to look at who's doing industry days in your NAICS code or your vertical, the government posts events to SAM.gov all the time, not just opportunities. So use this to set up an industry day search and then save that down so that you're getting notice of opportunities to connect with the client in different verticals and different clients. Always a great search. I have every one of my clients set the search up. Really easy to do. Special notice, type in industry day, type in your NAICS code. Set it and forget it, and then it'll email you every time that there's one available. So that was kind of my quick and dirty into the SAM.gov space. Does anybody have any questions or any comments? Does anybody want to see anything? We still have
we have a couple questions first, and you can probably take it from there.
Sure.
So Sandra, yes, there isn't a NAICS code for cybersecurity in small business, so I use General 541, 519. How can I do these searches?
That is a very good point. There's not a cyber NAICS code, but the DLA uses product service codes, so we can get you there. Let's see, in the D's, get you down to D. IT telecom, DC01 data center, DD01 services, DE02, DE10, IT telecom data management. Security and compliance, DJ01, DJ10 will be your product service code here. Do you want we'll just do the whole one. And then we can, this will be all of your cybersecurity crosswalked from your NAICS codes. So it's important to know your codes as well. And that's something we can help out with. So your NAICS code for cyber is DJ01 and DJ10. It gets you a little bit more dialed in than your NAICS code, and it works like a charm in SAM.gov and USAspending.gov. And don't hold it against me, the fact I know that. I am very much a recovering data analyst and a geek. So I kind of dig this stuff if you can't tell already.
Brandy has two questions kind of combined. Question will drawings be attached? I'm not sure. You're not asking for the slides for this presentation. I assume you're talking about drawings as far as a proposal or a bid.
Yeah, technical drawings. So for technical drawings, there's a couple of different things. You want to be signed in and preferably attached to your company because your company has some clause there. If you are having, and I've had past issues with clients and technical drawings, if you are having issues accessing technical drawings after you're signed in, then you want to contact us. Reach out to the contracting officer and let them know you're having issues. And if issues persist, then we can help you contact the Federal Service Desk and see what permission is missing from your profile. Definitely have had those troubles. The troubles persist. The great thing about SAM.gov is they're trying to build in features that make it more accessible and usable. But that means it's constantly changing, and sometimes there's some bugs in the system. They are trying their best. I can attest that it's not been a smooth road, but overall they're working on getting better. I'm a SAM alpha tester, so I'm constantly getting updates from them on features they're adding and in ways they're trying to make life easier for us. So bear with us and definitely reach out if you keep having those problems, and we can help you through it.
And then I can't put it in because it's a big, but where do you get the NAICS codes?
Sure.
That's a big PDF. I know trying to share that won't work.
Nope, you just you go to the Census Bureau. And you have census.gov/NAICS. And these are where you get your official codes. Quite honestly, guys, I know a lot of them just by heart at this point, but a quick Google should get you there too. I would probably double check it against the NAICS engine. Now your product service codes. You can go to the PSC tool and the DoD procurement toolbox, your product service tool. They did recently update them. There's a spreadsheet that I tend to work off of, but you can kind of look at some of these. So it drops down pretty easily for you, and you can always search bar it here. So that Census runs the NAICS code, and then psctool.us is a great one for your product service codes.
And Billy, I just want to add, you can also search for SBA size standard table, because that will pull up a PDF of if you click on that and then you download the PDF, it shows you all of the NAICS codes and their size standards. If you wanted to know if you were considered small business or other than small. And
yes,
you can hit Control F on that spreadsheet and search by individual code if you know what it is. You can just plug in the NAICS code there and it'll go straight to it. And that's updated as of 2022.
Yeah, you got you have the size standard 5.1, 6.1.
I use that like 30 times a day.
Yeah, it's an excellent tool. Yeah, because the size standard, and again, how you approach the RFI, how you approach your teaming situation, all of that is based on this. So it's a great document to have.
But
Yeah,
know
Joe,
that
I
they
was
get
just
updated. Yeah, they get updated like every other year. So you may want to check. These are 2022. They'll probably come out with new ones in 2024.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent tool. And one I probably don't use enough for my clients. Yeah, January 1st, 2022.
Like I said, I learned something. I've learned a lot from what you presented. So that's what I think everyone should know. There's just so much to know that the more that we're able to collaborate, the better.
Oh, definitely. Guys, we learn something every day. The government is a huge, intimidating beast. So you're not alone. And yeah, I always tell my clients, you can't ask any dumb questions because I've already asked them all. And if I haven't, I ask some every day. And that's the important part is, don't be afraid to ask questions. This is it has a learning curve to it. And we continuously learn. I mean, we go to multiple trainings a year because it's continuously changing. And it's something that I don't think anybody will ever have it mastered, but we do have a repeatable process that's more successful than not usually.
And we do have a couple here. Sandra, do you think starting local in Ohio gives us a better opportunity to do government contracting?
I'm a big fan of it depends. We work a lot out here like that. A lot of people spin up businesses after they retire, consultancies that are geared towards the federal space. So in that case, it makes more sense to them to target the client they know. I would ask myself a couple of questions, right? Back to that bid, no bid. Where do you have relationships? Where do you have knowledge? Where are you familiar? It's important to be able to talk the customer's language. So I think that and market research. Let's make some data-driven decisions. Who's buying what you're selling? And that's really where I would start. In order to do that exploration.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's a good point that it does depend on the customization of your own situation. You could be in a couple different states for different reasons.
Mm-hmm.
So Ohio certainly is a part of a great opportunity and portfolio. So with what we bring to the table.
And we do recommend, you do want to start small. If you don't have the huge past performance, I always try to look back at that past performance question. What does my past performance tell me with recency and relevancy? Similar in size and scope. So if you have a commercial client, $1 million project on the commercial side, you're not going to bid a $50 million project on the government side. You want to kind of make that translation. You do want to grow, but that doesn't happen overnight. So if you think that the local government has the size of bites you can take, then we can help you there, and I applaud it. If you think that you're better fit with certain government agencies on the federal side, I would explore that. It really comes down to a unique situation with each company.
And from Brandy, is size standard the amount of your company's annual revenue or receipts? So obviously the number of employees will be in there as well, probably as part of that whole question.
Yeah, it'd be great if it were, it's your receipts. Yeah, it's your total receipts.
Well, we can't really cheat there, can we, Joe?
No, it would be because I get firms all the time. What, isn't it net income? No. It's your total receipts. And back to the Ohio question, just remember the federal government is across all 50 states and also US territories. So a U.S. territory includes American embassies, like around the world. I had a firm when I first started working with SBA. She got a contract at a base in Japan. She did construction. So with construction, that's a little bit different because you have to make sure that you can get your product and your employees and your materials to that location. But you can potentially get work anywhere in the country. So just remember that. So it's not necessarily your geographical location. Like I don't know that being an Ohio business will benefit you for Right Pat or for DLA or DOE any more than firms outside of the state. When you're looking at state procurement, then Buy Ohio is something that the Department of Development had for a while. And sometimes locally, like within cities or counties, I know the city of Cincinnati has something for buying from local Cincinnati businesses.
And as a rule, military installations do try to look local first for goods and services, for certain goods and services, not like enterprise IT.
Like for construction or smaller repair jobs, sure.
Emergency electrician, HVAC, maybe some smaller good purchases. They have a start local initiative at those installations. But overall, you're right. The federal government is global. And we actually have a client that does some work over in Japan out of Cincinnati. They've grown out of Cincinnati into a national reach and international reach of CONUS over at Japan. So it is possible to do that and to grow and evolve with the federal government as a client.
And we have Sandra has a good question. I do cybersecurity awareness training. So in that case, should I search for education or training codes as well?
What you can do, and this is, again, these are the contracts coming out. We can help you search past contracts. So you could do, let's see, education is U01001. You can compile codes. You can do NAICS code and product service code. So if I didn't want to use product service for education, I could do 611430, professional management development training. So it really depends. You really got to get in here and find that mix. I call it the Goldilocks mix. You don't want 6,000 opportunities, but you don't want zero either. Unless you're looking at a very specific niche, and then zero is okay as long as you save it down and you make sure you get notified whenever that search is updated. But I mean, definitely something you can look at with these codes and compiling them.
It looks
What's
like
cool. I'm sorry. I just love watching Billy do this because it working with an Apex accelerator can help get you started. It's a great tool. You just need practice at it. It's just like watching a wizard. It's neat to watch you anyway, Billy. I just wanted to give that comment.
I'm not proud of myself that I have all these codes memorized. It's not healthy. It is not a healthy thing.
But once you've done it for a while, they just kind of just roll off the tongue. But
yeah,
and I'm sure there's some of them that are always you use a lot, right, Billy? I mean, that's the thing. Once the clients learn their own groove and the area they're used to working in, it'll definitely be a lot simpler and easier for them.
There's an anatomy of a code. So you see these numbers up here, those are your industries. So your first two numbers are going to be your industry. And then the next two number gets into sub-industry, and then the last two number gives you your niche. So it's first two, second two, third two. They drill down, and you can stay as broad or get as narrow as you want using these. Just don't memorize them. It's not good dinner conversation.
Yeah, it's funny. I tell my kids because they're like taking biology right now. So they're like, Mom, what is a protozoa? What is what's the chemical elements of photosynthesis? And I'm like, just ask me about the 8A program.
Right, yeah.
It's
let's-
like, I don't
let's
have
get
any
into-
room in my brain anymore.
No, so we have been jaded by our government support.
Yes.
But if you're having trouble sleeping, the NAICS codes and the FAR can really it can get you there.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean that, or if you really want, you can read the some of these award notices. They get pretty bad as well.
Davion, looks like, I guess a couple questions probably for Davion about it having issues with SAM. Davion, are you already active in SAM, or are you just at the very beginning of creating your SAM account? Will be a question back to him, and then we'll find out what county or what area of the state for your accelerator, Apex accelerator, that can definitely get you some help.
Yeah, Bondo, if you put in our can you pop in our Apex website in the chat? It's pretty simple. It's apex.ohio.edu. One, all of our past trainings that have been recorded are on that. But two, there's also a new client registration. If you haven't registered, you can pop in a quick online application. It takes like 5 minutes, and that gets you into our queue for support. So, going back to that response time, we try to respond to the people that are higher up in the queue, and then go down the queue as we clear people and get them onboarded. But that's a great place to start for, one, a lot of the past trainings we've done with the SBA are on there. But two, to get in a notice for somebody to contact you.
Yeah, I'll work on that. I don't have dual screens right now, but if you can help Sue on the DLA question, then I'll work on popping in the Apex.
Sure. Yes. Okay. So how can we search for a particular agency? For example, in DLA, 2 ways you can do that. Okay. So, each agency has something called a DODAC. It's an activity code. So you see with any contract, these first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 digits, that is the office code for the agency. So you'll see that if I took this and I just copied it, office is commander. So if I just pop that in chat, I should get well, that didn't work. Let's do this. You'll see the office is commander. So those contractors, first 6 digits, the DODACs, are a really easy way to get you down to the overall office, which is a really granular organization. I think the U.S. Army Corps W91QR2 maybe. But yeah, so yeah, those DODACs are very important. Now, if you're going a little bit more broader, you can go and use this federal organization chart, and that will get you to a broad cross section. So you'll see it includes troop support, aviation. It includes all of the different DLAs. So if you want a DLA aviation or DLA troop support specifically, you'd probably want to use your DODAC. But for starting out, your federal organizations tab right here, it's an excellent way to quickly narrow down to, I believe it's the sub-agency or the sub-agency. It won't get you down to the office though.
Okay, I popped in. I did our Apex US as well, just so you guys can have that. That never hurts for the broader picture of all the Apexes and a lot of the information that's embedded in there. And then obviously I put the apexohio.edu, which is our local one. And Billy, now I think about it, there's probably one for the state itself as well, right? Or will that should cover, right? Or ohio.edu.
Yeah, that should be fine. We can always guide them as they need it. So this is probably more up Jill's alley. Joe, I have a hard stop at 12. I'm actually walking into another presentation. Is it okay if you drive from here?
Sure.
I'm doing this. You are now co-host.
Thank you so much, Billy. I didn't realize you were, yeah, you're just going from one to the next, but thank you so much.
Yeah, no, guys, hey, this has been a pleasure. If you can't tell, we really do dig what we do. Jill, it's always awesome presenting with you. Yeah, it's always fun. I always grab a couple of nuggets or two to take my clients. So really, really great time. If you need anything, Bondo and Jill are going to stay on for a couple minutes, right, guys?
Yeah,
Yes.
I do not remove raccoons out of attics though, Jill. I will tell you that.
Well, that's,
That's a
other
different
duties-
game, for the love of the game.
other duties as assigned. Really great, guys. Really enjoyed it. I have to jump, but you're in good hands and look forward to talking to you guys later at some point.
Thanks, Billy.
Thank you, Billy.
See you guys.